Good afternoon and welcome to the Quantum Alignment Show. I'm Karen Curry Parker and we are going to be talking today about the end of spiral dynamics, which is, technically speaking, the title is not a particularly sexy title, but it is a really important conversation that we're going to have, because what we see when we talk about growth and expansion, when we talk about setting goals, when we talk about setting intentions, when we talk about committing to getting stuff done, when we're looking at what needs to happen for us to break through to a different level of growth and experience in our lives, we find that we tend to have predictable places where we get stuck and bungled up. It is very common in our conversations, even in our conversations that we have around human design, to be okay with the continuation of coming up to that same stuck point. And what I really want to talk about today is that if you keep hitting a different version of the same wall, an up-leveled version, we'll have it, of the same wall, it might be for a different reason than you might think. And I want to explore today where that spiral that you keep going around, maybe in bigger and more expansive ways, where is that spiral for you, and what's on that spiral, and what do you maybe need to explore more deeply to really set yourself free from the spiral in general, so that you're not continuing to go around and around and around. So, all right, so we're going to start with slides. Kristen will post slides for you at some point. I will also search for my slides, which are not coming up. Hello, slides, where did you go? Okay, let's try this again. Okay, I am having very interesting button adventures today. This morning I got on here and I didn't even have audio. So I'm feeling happy that I have audio. Okay, good. All right, we have slides. So hopefully you all can see these. So here's our beautiful graphic, right? The end of spiral dynamics. You may have heard the expression, new level, same devil. Today we're going to talk about how to get rid of the devil. So devil be gone. We're not going to have new level, same devil. We're just going to have new level, no devil, all right? So we have to start first by just a very basic introduction to the human design chart, just because I know that for some of you this is new and some of you have been here forever and you're like, you know everything already, but let's try to meet somewhere in the middle. The human design chart shows you your life purpose. It shows you your strength. It shows you your weaknesses. It shows you your potential for wisdom, how to best make decisions, how you experience the world, and of course more than that. It is a blueprint for your human experience and condition. In this chart is the story of who you are. But that story is an outline, okay? It's not like it's all the way written. It's just an outline. And some of you are going to have an outline that has a little bit more detail, has a little bit more rigidity to it. So especially for those of you who are 5th and 6th line profiles, your story outline or your plot is not as fluid as maybe somebody with a 1st, a 2nd, or a 3rd line profile, especially a 3rd line profile. So some of you will have a little bit more detail in your story. Some of you will have more flexibility. But here's the piece that I want you to really get. You know, you could have a story outline, and what you plug into that outline is going to be, has the potential to be very different, and to a certain degree can change the nature of the story. You know, when we look astrologically at twins, for example, and you look at the charts of twins, most twins have the same chart, or in human design, except down to, you know, unless you know like the birth time down to the second, most twins have identical charts. And yet they are two different people with two very different life stories, because even though the plot outline and the template, the outline itself is the same, what they plug into that outline can be different. You have control over what you choose to put on your outline. And so even though there may be predictable places where you are designed to push against yourself, every chart has what I call a conundrum in it. But that conundrum, at a certain point, you can master. And once you become masterful of it, it doesn't become that same hiccup, except a bigger, more evolved version of that same hiccup. It becomes a place where you have the potential for growth without the devil. And forgive me for using devil references. It's really, I don't tend to as religious at all. I'm just being silly. When we look at the chart, we see that the highest expression of humankind is the full engagement and joy that allows us to evolve by learning from and leaving the past behind, by consciously and consistently expressing our authentic potential and making our unique contribution to the world. That unique contribution, by the way, is you being you. It's not what you do, it's who you are. Taking our direction from spirit, being physically vital, having all the resources we need to fulfill our destiny, and taking actions that are only for our, not only for our good, your good, but for the greater good of the world. In other words, when we look at the chart, we see that we are designed to feel good, being who we are and doing what we came here to do. And by the way, in case you forgot over the course of this week, we're actually also designed, hardwired, to be nice to each other. So let's try to keep doing that more. But sometimes when we live life and we go down and we express the story of who we are, we experience pain. And that pain can be financial pain, spiritual pain, relationship pain, physical pain, career pain. Pain is something that gets our attention. It hurts us in some way. What we see about pain is, and we tend to want to try to heal pain. You can get rid of pain, you can heal pain, but if you don't get to the root of pain, you're not really going to be effective in mastering pain over the duration. Because we misinterpret pain and we think of it as a product, or rather we think of it as the problem. Pain is not the problem. When we experience pain, pain isn't the problem. Pain is the symptom. Pain is a barometer that tells you how close or how far you are from expressing your true self. The more you live off your chart, meaning the more misaligned you are with your authentic self, the greater the pain, suffering, and the chances you have for physical illness, financial pain, emotional pain, the greater the chance is for you to be experiencing pain in some place in your life. That pain is telling you, hey, you're out of sync here. Something about how you're expressing yourself in the world isn't aligned with what's true and important and valuable and precious about you. The human design chart can be used as a tool to help you discover the source of pain. And today I'm going to do a really broad pass over this conversation. And next week we have, I think, next week we have, do we have a guest host next week, Kristen? I forgot. We do not.
Next week we do not.
Okay, good. I'm just checking. Next week I'm going to do a more specific focus on different ways to look at pain in particularly the body and the chart. But we're going to look at pain in general today as a symptom and some of the root causes of pain and why we get stuck in these spiral dynamics. So if we look at the chart as a source of information about the potential for our vitality, the potential for our well-being, and we understand that if we are experiencing vitality and well-being, every piece of the chart can teach us or show us where we need to bring our life expression back into harmony with our natural design, who we are, so that we can begin the process of minimizing that warning signal of pain that we're experiencing. So I'm going to give you an example because I think this will hopefully help you really understand what's possible when you really look at the chart as a spectrum of potential and really begin to explore your own personal charts in the context of how are you expressing the potential in your chart? Are you expressing the high expression, or are you working with a lower expression of the potential or the archetypes in your chart? So I'm going to back up for a second and do just a little bit of just a different way. It's not radically different, but a different way of looking at this chart, because if you can see the chart from this perspective, it's kind of cool. This chart, the human design chart, which is a synthesis of Eastern and Western astrology, the Chinese I Ching, the Hindu chakra system, Kabbalah, and quantum physics, is really a cross-cultural index of archetypes, okay? It's a cross-cultural index of archetypes. It's got Eastern archetypes in it. It's got Western archetypes in it. You know, when we look at the information in this chart, it's basically just a Rolodex of human potentials. Now, I talk about it in the context of potential because every aspect of your chart, whether it's open, meaning wherever you have white in the chart, we call that open. Wherever you have white in the chart, that's where you're taking energy and information in. So wherever you have openness in the chart, you have the potential of experiencing a wide range of potentials, because you're going to be getting that energy from all the people around you. And as the people change and as you change your environment, what you experience in your openness shifts and changes. And then in the context of also your definition, so anything that's colored in the chart is what you have, what we call defined. So everything that's colored in is defined. That's energy that you have consistent and to a certain degree more fixed or rigid ways of experiencing. Either way, whether you have something open or whether you have something defined, you always have a choice as to whether you're going to experience or express the low energy of it or the high energy of it. Archetypes are neutral concepts. This chart, which is just this giant collection of cross-cultural archetypes, archetypes are just possibilities or potentials. They're just characters in your story, or parts of the character that you are playing in your story. Those characters can show up in lots of different ways. So let's look at the character of the second line in the profiles, the hermit, right? You can have somebody who is a hermit who consciously and deliberately, with great awareness, takes time every month to go into retreat for 4 days, to deliberately connect with their inner self, to nurture themselves. Maybe they go to a spa or a meditation retreat, or maybe they just take their tent out into the wilderness, and they use that hermit energy to restore and replenish their connection to source and their own personal vitality. That's one way the hermit energy could get expressed. Or maybe, here's another way, the hermit could be like Boo Radley, right? In To Kill a Mockingbird, you have this recluse, right, who peeks out into, between the blinds and doesn't come out until there's a real need for him to come out and to make a heroic act in the end, right? So, the energy or the archetype of hermit has a spectrum of how it can be expressed. Everything in your chart exists on a spectrum. And what you're expressing right now probably is the sum total of all the experiences that you've had, your genetic programming, the belief systems you've been inculcated with, all of those pieces of your conditioning, your imprinting in this lifetime are influencing how you express the archetypes in your chart. The beauty and the power of human design is that when you understand your chart, then you start to have more power and control and conscious choice over how you're going to express that chart. So back to my example here. This is the gate 48. The gate 48 is the gate of depth. I did not say death, I said depth, okay? So it is an archetype that needs depth and information. This is the perpetual student archetype, right? This is the curious archetype. Somebody who has the gate 48, they want to know everything. So in the high expression, this is someone who has a depth of knowledge and who understands that sometimes when you have enough knowledge, you take action based on that knowledge. That's probably what I would consider to be the highest expression of the gate 48. You're wise, you have a lot of information and knowledge, and when the time is right, you act on that knowledge. The low expression of this gate is inadequacy. And many of you, I'm assuming, probably experience this energy. I tend to attract a lot of people who have this because it's an electromagnetic to my enthusiasm, my 16, the other side of this channel. So the low expression of this gate is the fear that I don't know enough, I don't have enough experience, I need more training, I need to study more, I can't do this because I'm not ready yet. So we have this wise person who seeks a depth of knowledge, and in the low expression questions and doubts their own wisdom, their own depth of information. Okay? You have a choice to live out either one of these expressions, or because it's really a spectrum, anything in between. And you might find, if you have this gate defined in your chart, that you're all over the spectrum depending on what's going on and who you're with and what you're studying. You're not always going to sit in one place on the spectrum. It's a moving potential. But you will tend to shake out, usually more at one end or the other or in the middle. When you understand your chart, you start to understand how you can begin to make choices around bringing out deliberately and with awareness the highest expression of all the characters in your chart. Now, as I said, the human design chart is a map. And that map has many layers. So the first layer in that map is what I call the Resiliency Keys, which we're going to talk about today. Each one of these layers, by the way, gives you a different set of archetypes to play with. We are always working on an integrated level with all of these archetypes, but when we're trying to get to the root of pain, or when we're trying to find out where exactly does that devil live that keeps kicking my butt every time I up level, we have to look for that devil, or we have to look for that root of pain in all these different layers. We usually start, in fact, we always start with what I call the Resiliency Keys, which I'm going to explain to you in just a minute. The Resiliency Keys are 9 core archetypes that are a synthesis of all the archetypes and the human needs in the chart, and those 9 Resiliency Keys have to be functioning at the highest level possible if you're going to break free from spiral dynamics. The next level of archetype in the chart is your type. Your type presents its own energy challenges, its own spectrum of potential. The next level that influences you, that may be carrying one of the sources of your pain, where you may be out of alignment with yourself, is your profile. The next one is going to be your centers. I know that a lot of people teach that the open centers are hugely problematic and defined centers are awesome. I'm going to tell you that you can have great and beautiful experiences in your open and your defined centers, or you can have crappy and horrible experiences in your defined centers. So, I mean, it's real, and your open centers. So again, your center's definition, whether it's colored in or white, is still a spectrum of potential, and you can have definition in your centers that can still give you pain if you're not, especially if you're not living true to that energy that you're carrying. The circuits, in this chart, there's actually circuitry. If you looked at the hardwiring of the electricity in your house, you know that you have circuits in your house, right? You have the stove and the refrigerator and the bathroom lights, right? Those are the things that always blow in my house anyway. The circuits are connected to each other and work together. There are 3 kinds of circuits in the human design chart, and those circuits also contain a spectrum of potential. And when you understand the circuitry in your chart, you can start to bring out the conscious expression of the circuitry. And of course, there are 64 gates in the chart, and those can also be usually at the root of the root of the root of pain. So when we look at the chart and we're looking at where is the pain, we're usually starting first with what's Resiliency Keys is being a problem, what's going on with your type, your profile, your centers, your circuits, and your gates. And I'm not going to get into this at all because this is pretty complex, in-depth analysis of a chart, but certainly any of my quantum alignment practitioners have been well trained in knowing how to look at the chart and to help you find the emotional archetype-based source of any pain you might have in your life based on what's going on in your chart. As I said, each layer in the map has more and more nuanced themes. Each layer gives us a challenge or a choice point, which gives us awareness and consciousness, enabling us to break unconscious patterns, meaning when you understand your chart, you can choose high or low expression here. We all have built-in choice points in our design, And sometimes our life experiences trigger choice points that aren't even inherently ours. This oftentimes will come from our genetic lineage and our imprinting. Choice points create questions, they create motivations, they can be high or low. If you're living out the low expression of your chart because you are designed to be a high functioning, abundant, trusting, creative, expressive person, if you're not living in that space, then you will be living the low expression, and that low expression will often give you pain. High expressions usually manifest as joy and abundance. When I'm talking about abundance, I'm not talking about piles of money. I'm talking about experiencing well-being in your life. Your choice points create struggle. You are designed to struggle. In fact, we see in the chart that struggle is often a catalyst for growth, okay? But you are not designed to suffer or be in pain. In fact, suffering and pain aren't even on the human design chart, yet we keep sticking ourselves back into those places because we haven't worked with the top level, the 9 resiliency keys, to be able to consciously draw out higher expressions of our potentials. All right, this is my favorite new slide. All right, so I like this slide because I am not very good at graphics. In fact, I suck at them, and I'm just being honest. But I have this image in my head that if you take the human design chart and put it in a blender, which is what I'm trying to say with this graphic, if you take the chart and you put it in a blender and you word it up, and you started to look at the relationship between all the little parts of the chart, the gates, the channels, the types, the centers, if you looked at all of these things, you would be able to distill all of those parts into 9 core areas of focus or 9 core archetypes. I call those 9 core archetypes the resiliency keys. The resiliency keys are rooted in human design and also rooted in concepts from human development. In other words, children, as they grow up, become healthy adults if they learn how to express the highest aspect of these 9 core archetypes. And for them to become healthy and mature and resilient as adults, as parents or as teachers or community members, we need to support children in getting those needs met appropriately so that they can become resilient. Now, most of you, probably all of you, are not children, and you are probably carrying within you old experiences, old traumas, even genetic memories. These aren't even your memories, genetic memories that may have triggered for you a consistent expression of a consistent low expression of any of these 9 resiliency keys. And I'm going to tell you, if you haven't cleared any of the trauma, any of the beliefs, any of the old experiences, any of the genetic triggering that you might be carrying around any of these 9 resiliency keys, you will be stuck in spiral dynamics. Because more than anything in the world, your beingness wants to heal these 9 core archetypes. These 9 core archetypes are literally the key for you to unlock the full potential of your human story, your human design chart. And when you elevate the expression of these 9 keys, it's literally like opening the door to having a much higher degree of freedom and choice over how you're going to express yourself and your potential in the world. So let's talk about choice one more time before I tell you what these 9 resiliency keys are. And you know what I forgot, Kristen? I forgot my clock. I can't see what time it is. Can you tell me really quickly what time it is?
It is 1:27.
Woohoo!
So we have
all right.
30 minutes left.
Yay, doing good. Wow, I might actually do this in a really good timely manner. You ready? All right. Every time you make a choice, whether it's a big, giant macro choice, like I'm going to move to Costa Rica, I'm wishing because winter's coming, or a micro choice, what do I eat? Am I going to work out today? Am I going to meditate today? Am I going to get some good sleep for myself today? Am I going to express the wisdom of who I am in its highest potential today? Anytime you're making a choice, the way in which you go about making that choice and the end result of what choice you make is going to be influenced by where you rank yourself on the 9 resiliency keys. So if you are stuck and you seem to be going around in a circle, dealing with the same issue over and over again, maybe you've gone to therapy for this issue, maybe you've gotten coaching for this issue, and yet 25, 30 years later, you still keep bumping up against it. First of all, if that's true, if that's what's happening for you, I really want to say to you, this is not your fault. I am not in any way blaming you or causing you to go, man, I screwed up. That's not the point of this conversation at all. I am saying that we are still unraveling the mystery of the human experience. And we are certainly still unraveling the mystery of what motivates and drives us on a emotional, spiritual, psychological, even neurobiological level. And science in the last 15, 20 years has made huge shifts in understanding what drives us. For example, we now understand that for many of us, the choices we make are rooted in our genetic components. And those genetic components, the expression of those genetic components are influenced by the choices, the experiences, the past traumas of our ancestors up to 7 generations before you were born. So if you're stuck in what we might call an epigenetic loop, meaning your ancestral lineage is triggering your choices. So let me give you a very concrete example. Let's say your great-great-grandparents were in West Texas during the Great Depression / Dust Bowl. And I don't know if any of you have family that comes from that area, but that was a place where during the Great Depression there was extreme poverty. People lived in boxcars and they lost everything because dust came and there were no crops, and there was so, it was just a very tragic era. And of course the Great Depression meant that the entire country was experiencing an economic downturn. Parents and grandparents or people who lived through that time and survived, many of them were very traumatized by that time, and they conserved everything they got. My first husband's grandmother was from West Texas, and when she died, and we went through her home and, prepared the home to sell it, every drawer had like every rubber band she had, she'd saved every rubber band, every piece of paper, every string, nothing was thrown out from this, this sense of, I need to hold on to this, what if I need it later, this trauma from going through and making it through the Great Depression. If that's in your lineage and you're experiencing financial pain, your human design chart is first and foremost going to tell you a lot about how is that financial pain manifesting. It's going to show you a lot about where energetically some of those roots of that financial pain might be. But that's also going to be augmented by what happened in your family lineage. You may have already been born with this fear of, what if I don't have enough? I need to hoard. I need to hold on to. I need to be, restrictive with my finances, because what if I don't have enough? And that may not even be yours. That may be something that came from your lineage. But that lineage can be cleared. In fact, our research shows that when we start to tell a different story about who we are, when we begin to change our identity based on our telling of a new story of who we are, we actually begin to shift and change our genetic expression. We change the way our DNA functions. Okay, that's huge. But if you do not have a high functioning output on the 9 resiliency keys, it will be very difficult for you to reprogram that genetic expression and reprogram that genetic memory. So whenever you hit a choice point about how you're going to express yourself in the world, your choices, macro or micro, are being influenced by the 9 resiliency keys and where you rank yourself on the 9 resiliency keys. These 9 resiliency keys are 9 cores that are at the root of healing, maturity, health, and resiliency. You have to function at the highest level of these keys if you're going to get out of struggle in your chart, and they are at the root of most pain and trauma. So I'm going to go through the 9 resiliency keys. I'm going to tell you which centers they are most frequently associated with. That doesn't mean that they are absolutely about those centers. It doesn't matter, by the way, if the centers are defined or open. Okay, this is really just looking, remember, we put everything in the chart in a blender, right? So, but I want you, rather than to go back and forth and look at your chart, because the human design chart is awesome, it also doesn't explain everything. I want you to just, as I read these statements and tell you a little bit about each of these keys, to really just drop in to a feeling level with yourself about how do you experience this energy? You know, really feel into, are you living out the high expression of this? Do your choices reflect the highest expression of this key? Or are you living out a lower expression? I will tell you at the end some ways that you can go about starting to heal that. But for now, I want you just to tune into, where are you on these keys? Where do you rank on these keys? So the very first key is lovability. How lovable do you perceive yourself to be? Do you believe that you can be loved and accepted for who you are? If you don't perceive yourself as being lovable, it has the potential to compromise a lot of your choices. You are probably compromising yourself in most of your choices because you are driven by a desire to be loved and accepted for who you are. It's hardwired into us. This is basic human need, right? Babies are a great example. I mean, babies are hardwired to be loved. They need to be loved to live. And if we don't get our love needs met from the start, and we carry this wounding in our lovability, then we run the potential of making choices over the course of our life to try to prove our lovability to others or to ourselves, all right? Lovability is primarily associated with the G center. The G center. Usually if it's defined, you question your ability to be accepted for who you are. If it's open, you question your ability to be loved for who you are. The second resiliency key is empowerment. Empowerment is the ability or the sense and the awareness to have control or to be able to take control over your life. Now, let me just say, you can't control your life, okay? Life's going to happen in the sense that you may be doing everything right and the unexpected might happen. That's part of how we grow in our human journey, right? Sometimes the unexpected happens. But you have control over how you handle it, right? You have control whether you freak out and get angry and rageful or depressed and broken, or you have the choice to say, okay, this is a part of my story. This is not a particularly happy part of my story, but it's part of my story. Where can I find the blessings from the story and how can I move forward in my life? You need to feel powerful in your life. In fact, it's such an important human need that we go through 2 developmental cycles as we grow up that are about our learning how to have appropriate power. We go through it, and if you have toddlers at home, your 2-year-olds, your 2 to 4-year-olds or 2 to 5-year-olds are learning about power, how to be powerful. That's why they learn to say the word no. You go through a second developmental phase in your early adolescence from like 12 to 16, plus or minus a few years. Some of us have kids that are deeper into this for a longer period of time. that second cycle was also all about discovering how do you tap into your personal power. If you feel powerless in your life, it will influence the kinds of choices that you make. And oftentimes what we do is when we feel powerless, we overcompensate by power struggling or abdicating completely. Empowerment, by the way, is usually associated with either the will center, the sacral center, or the emotional solar plexus. Courage is the third resiliency key. We are not designed to be paralyzed in fear unless we are running from a bear. And even then, you're supposed to run, not be paralyzed, right? You're supposed to take action. And yet, many of us are paralyzed by fear and anxiety. We struggle with breaking through the fear and getting to the other side of whatever it is that we need to get through to experience the full expression of our mastery and our joy. So when you are struggling with courage, when you are letting fear run the show, and it's easy to do, there are a lot of places in our chart where we're hardwired to experience fear, but the purpose of that fear is to get you to act, not to get paralyzed, okay? When you don't know how to work with fear and use it as a pushing off point for action, and you get stuck in the fear, it will influence the choices you make, for sure. So courage is usually associated with the G center. By the way, when I'm saying these centers, I'm also saying it's associated with all of the gates on the center, okay? So, for example, if I say courage is associated with the G center, I'm saying it's associated with the G center and also the gate 10, the 7, the 1, the 13, the 25, the 46, the 2, and the 15. Those are all the gates around the G center. So all of those gates can also be associated with courage, or the low or high expression of courage. So courage is associated with the identity center, the spleen, the sacral center, the solar plexus, and the solar plexus center. And I put these little questions here for you. They are on the slide handout that Kristen gave you. I really invite you to take one of those questions for the next 9 weeks and just dive deep into that question and explore it and really ask yourself, am I living out the highest expression here? And if not, what's holding me back? And this is the most important question to ask yourself. What would my life look like if I lived more courageously? What would your life look like if you lived out the high expression of the 9 resiliency keys? The next resiliency key is called decisiveness. This is a big one for a lot of people. It's knowing how to choose what's right for you. In my coaching practice, I will tell you that most of my clients struggle with knowing how to choose, with knowing their right way of making a good decision. This is, of course, the brilliance and the beauty of human design, is it teaches you exactly how you should be making a decision. There are little nuances along the way, like what if you're emotionally defined, or what if you have splenic authority. So for the most part, with great clarity, your chart tells you exactly how to make your decision. But if in the past you've made decisions that you didn't like, or you made decisions that left you feeling like a failure, or maybe even created great loss in your life, you might be stuck with making a good decision, or you might be afraid of making decisions. And that getting stuck in that decisions or not making a decision can really influence the choices that you make about expressing who you are. So the question here is, do you know how to choose what's right for you? And I will tell you that decisiveness is associated with every center in the chart except the throat and even the root center. So everybody's going to have adventures with decisiveness on some level. And yet it's also one of the easier resiliency keys to clear, because once we get rid of the trauma of past decisions and you then learn your human design, you can learn a pretty easy system to learn how to make good choices. Emotional wisdom is the next resiliency key. Your emotional energy is the most creative energy in the chart. It's actually the energy with which we create the frequency of energy that calibrates our heart center, that calibrates the magnetic resonance field in the heart, and influences what you attract and create in your life. But we get confused about emotions. And if you want to learn more about emotional wisdom, if you're on the Facebook page, go over to the left, go to the tab that says videos, click on the videos tab. A few weeks ago, I did a presentation, maybe it's a couple of months ago now. I did a presentation on emotional wisdom. Watch that, you can learn more. There's a lot for me to say there. But emotional wisdom is really the capacity to know the difference between reacting, being reactive, versus being deliberate. So when you can consciously and deliberately use your emotional energy for your creative power, as part of your creative power, then you are emotionally wise. If you're being reactive, then you are probably making a very interesting set of choices. So the question here is, does emotional energy keep you from acting deliberately? And that's really more for our emotionally defined listeners. If you have an open solar plexus, you can ask yourself, do you compromise what you want because you're emotionally empathic? Do you compromise what you want in order to keep others happy? Are you denying yourself because you're in a codependent pattern because you're sensitive? The emotional wisdom is, of course, associated with the emotional solar plexus. Self-trust is your ability to trust your own inner wisdom. It's your ability to trust your intuition, and, of course, to trust your knowledge, your value, and everything else in your chart. So if you trust yourself, you will be willing to take leaps of faith and do what's right for you, regardless of what anybody else says. If you trust yourself, you will feel confident in making good decisions and choices for yourself. You will make a very different set of choices for yourself if you trust yourself. Self-trust is most frequently associated with the head center, the ajna center, and the spleen center. The next resiliency key is vitality. And if you go again to the event, the videos tab on the Facebook page, or if you go to my YouTube channel, I've done several videos now about burnout, which is the opposite of vitality. If you are burned out, you will be making a very different set of choices, and you will be stuck on a spiral. In fact, you'll be very stuck on a spiral, because what happens a lot of times is when you're burned out, nothing happens. So opportunities don't show up. Phone calls don't come. Emails don't come. Nothing happens. You get into dead space. And that dead space is actually you creating it, because you know that you need to rest. But we get desperate in dead space, right? We get desperate when we're in the void and we think, oh, I got to do something, I got to do something, I got to do something, because nothing's happening, instead of listening to the void and saying, oh, wait, this is my pause. This is my time to recalibrate my energy, to nurture myself, to get on the couch, to rest, to take naps. I'm trying to find the Murphy Brown show, because I don't have TV. That's what I want to do today for my respite, is find the Murphy Brown episode from last night and watch it. That's what I want to do to restore my vitality today. If you are not feeling vital, if you're not feeling vital, if you're feeling burned out, it's going to affect the choices you make. So the question here is, are you fully expressing your vitality and energy? And if you're not, or you feel like you can't, then what do you need to do to change that expression of that archetype? Vitality is most closely associated with the throat, the will center, the sacral, and the root center. Authenticity is the feeling that it's okay to be who you are in the world and to fully express the truth of who you are. I find that most of my clients really don't feel safe expressing who you are in the world. You know, who you are comes from your heart. The G center is part of the heart chakra. You know, to have the courage to express yourself from the heart, you know, is really vulnerable. And many of us don't feel that it's safe to do that for ourselves. And we hide. And again, remember, whenever you are hiding who you are, or you're denying the full expression of who you are into the world, number one, you're not fulfilling your life purpose, and you're going to feel that as pain. And number two, it's going to make you construct a fake life that's going to be a facade based on some fake character that you created because you didn't think it was safe to be who you are, so you decided to be someone else. And that doesn't work. It just creates more pain. It creates stuckness on this spiral. Authenticity is most commonly associated with the throat center and the identity center. Last but certainly not least, self-worth. Self-worth is about knowing how valuable you are. If you are not recognizing and standing in your value, meaning you're asking for what you want and need, you're loving yourself and valuing yourself enough to nurture yourself, to take a break, to take a pause when you need a pause. When you value yourself, you're setting good boundaries and you're willing to defend those boundaries no matter what. You're not being codependent, you're being interdependent, and you're taking care of yourself so that you can give more to others. When you're valuable, you ask for what you need in return from others. If you don't value yourself, you will compromise who you are. You will compromise the heart of who you are, because this is also part of the heart chakra. And you won't let yourself gain in exchange for who you are the value you need to sustain yourself in the world. And you'll make a very different set of choices. So these are the 9 resiliency keys. I want to look at this just as an example in the context of body image. I'm getting ready in October to teach a brand new human design course, Body Image by Human Design. It is the course, by the way, that is exclusively for women. It is, and if men want their own course or their own version of the course, I'm open to doing a version that's just for men. But I would just want to say that in my experience over the last year in particular, in working with the resiliency keys and working with integrated techniques to help people clear whatever pain and trauma they're experiencing in the resiliency keys, I have found that not loving your body or being traumatized in your body by life experiences doesn't just affect your body. Maybe that's a big shock. Maybe that's not shocking to you. It was hugely shocking to me. So for example, when I taught the beginning of this year, I did a series of master alignment classes, which is a program where we use the emotional freedom techniques in energy psychology technique. We use subtle body therapies, flower essences, essential oils. We use human design and coaching integrated into this really beautiful process. We did a 9-part, one for each resiliency key, 9-part program on abundance. So we took the issue of money and we related it to lovability, to power, to decisiveness. And what I found was, and this surprised me a lot, I've seen this a lot when I've done weight loss courses or when I've done health and healing courses. But what I found was that a large majority of the people taking the abundance program, people struggling with money, were at the root of it struggling with trauma that they'd experienced to their bodies, whether it was through abuse or molestation, or just in general not loving their physical form and hiding from wealth, hiding from money because their body was still carrying this trauma in it. So I decided in October to do body image because I certainly think, frankly, right now, at least in America, I think there's a lot of re-triggering of core body image issues, just given what's going on in the political scenario. And I think, frankly, it's a core issue for many of us as women in particular. So this is going to be the theme for our community class this month. Every month I teach a class. It's a class that's open to everyone. I teach it on a sliding scale. Anyone can take it. There is no shame in contributing, a small amount like $1, or if you can pay the full amount of the class, it's $227. It's up to you. You can even pay more if you want. I always have people who pay more, who donate some of their tuition to make it possible for other people to attend. What we do in the community classes is we have a set income that we need to bring in. So for the community class in October, we need $16,000. That covers all the staff, all the technology, all the emails, all the open office hours that happen because we give adjunct support for the tapping and the integrated programs that we do. We need to make $16,000 to make that class a go. But as I said, anybody can come to the class. We just continue, you can register and we just keep a running tab on how much money have we made as a community. And when we make our set amount, then the class is a go. I will tell you, we have never not made our base amount, which blows me away. I mean, I've been doing this now for almost a year, and it's just really moving and phenomenal. So in October, our program is going to be Body Image by Human Design. Then you will get 14 lessons about body, health, how your chart influences your physical expression, how your chart influences how your body holds pain and trauma, and what you need to clear in the context of the 9 resiliency keys in order for you to move more deeply into loving and taking care of your body. So I want to look at this today just as our quick example, and then I'll shift to questions. I want to look at this today in the context of body image and your chart. So let's say that you are struggling with body image, okay? That's I would say that's pretty normal. In fact, I just read a statistic yesterday that said the average woman thinks negative thoughts about her body at least 13 times a day. I would say that for some of us, it's probably more than that, okay? When you don't love your body, when you don't have a positive body image, you fail to take care of your body. So if you have been putting off exercising, or you don't eat as well as you know you should, or you don't sleep enough, or you don't nurture your body in the way that you think you should, or maybe you talk badly about your body. If you're not loving your body and taking the actions necessary to maintain the well-being of your body, you may have at the root of that lack of following through on good body habits a challenge with body image. Now, let's say that you have a defined G center. That's the diamond in the middle of the throat. And let's say that you have the channel 1-8. That's the channel that connects the top of the point of the diamond to the throat center, defined. Let's say that's colored in on your chart. So you have a defined G, defined throat. You have a channel 1-8 in between there. Anytime you have a channel connecting the G center to the throat, and there are a couple of ways that that can happen. That can happen through the 1020 out the left, the 731 at the top, the 1-8 at the top, the 1333 at the top. Anytime you have a defined G and a channel connecting it to the throat, colored in, you are vulnerable to criticism, because anytime you speak with that configuration in your chart, you are speaking from the heart of who you are. And there's no filter, there's no other center it's going through, there's no other driver or motivation there. And what you really want at the root of all of your communication when you have that configuration is the desire to be accepted for who you are. So the 1-8 is individual circuitry. This is the energy of somebody who is a creative role model. You're here to be different if you have this channel. If over the course of your life, you've expressed your unique self into the world, and people have said to you, oh my God, why can't you just be normal? What's wrong with you? Why are you wearing those weird clothes? What are you trying to do, make some kind of statement? No, we don't wear those kind of clothes in this city, in this town, in this family, right? Maybe somebody said that to you. Or maybe somebody looked at your hair and said, your hair is pink. Really? You're going to go with pink hair? Oh my God, that's so embarrassing. I don't even want you to, if you go to mom's house, if you go to your grandma's house like that, you need to wear a hat. Or better yet, why don't you just not come to dinner at grandma's house? Because, well, how am I going to explain that to mom, right? Maybe you were shamed for how you looked, for how you expressed your authentic self. Because your underlying driver, your resiliency key is, I want to be accepted for who I am. And maybe in your youthful experimentation of who am I, which is normal developmentally, you were not loved and accepted for who you are. And you learned to go underground with who you are. You learned to hide who you are. And whenever you do that, you stored that in your body, literally in the heart of who you are. Now, that energy connection is an energy connection that is related to your thyroid, okay? Because your thyroid is part of the throat center. And when you are hiding who you are, it very often affects the thyroid. Now, the thyroid is the master gland to the endocrine system, which is a system of glands throughout the body. That what we usually see is when somebody crashes their thyroid, they also, in conjunction with that, crash their adrenaline. And what we see is then the body metabolism is affected, and oftentimes it slows down and it gets sluggish, and we start to not feel good, and we don't feel vital, and we gain weight. And then our body image, of course, goes down even more. And we stop feeling that it's okay to be who we are in the world, because now not only is it not safe because we're weird, right? Or other people think we're weird. Now it's also not safe because now we don't fit society's standards of beauty. We're less than. So then we become hermits, or we hide who we are in big clothes, or we don't take care of ourselves and we rationalize hiding out in front of Netflix because we don't feel safe to be who we truly are in the world. So I'm bringing this up just because I'm wanting you to see how any issue where you think you're stuck, and especially if it's an issue that you've been dealing with around and around and around on a spiral, even if it's an issue that you thought you healed and then you went around the spiral and you came up against it again, I will challenge you to say that when you're hitting a same issue on a spiral and spiral dynamics, and it keeps coming up every time you go around the circle, it's not because that's your issue to deal with. There might be elements of that there, but it's probably that you haven't gotten down to the root in the 9 resiliency keys of why that pattern is there in the first place. So spiral dynamics can potentially become a thing of the past if we can move into a place where we express the highest potential of the 9 resiliency keys. Now, I'm going to have Kristen put, ooh, I'm down to the minute. I did good, Kristen. I'm going to have Kristen post the link below and in the chat if you're listening on Zoom to our body image course. I do have a special this week. The first 20 people who sign up for the body image program, regardless of how much you contribute to the class, your name will be entered into a drawing. We are giving away 1 free 1-hour reading and 2 free 30-minute readings. So 3 different readings to 3 different people. And we still have 4 spaces left. So please, take the time right now to go ahead and register and give yourself that gift. If you love this information and you are wanting to use it in your own practice as a coach, as a healer, if you want to learn how to become a healer or a coach, I do have a brand new training, the Quantum Alignment Program training, level 1. It actually starts next Thursday and Friday. We do have a special with that training. If you register for that training, you will be eligible to come to our annual Human Design Conference for free this year, which is in Flagstaff, Arizona, November 8th and 9th. And at our conference this year, we're going to be talking about the mechanics of motivation. So Kristen's going to post in the chat and on Facebook the link to the Body Image by Design program and also to the Quantum Alignment System training so that you can look at ways in which you can take these 9 resiliency keys and add them to your coaching practice or your healing practice. Or, as I said, if you want to become a healer yourself, you will get the training to use this system in conjunction with the emotional freedom techniques, human design, and subtle body therapies that we have custom created that support our clients and you guys in really clearing on multiple levels, on a genetic level, on a behavioral level, on an energetic level, clearing any place where you're not expressing the highest potential of who you really are. So do we have a couple minutes for questions, Kristen, or do you need to go?
No, I have time.
Okay, cool. Let's take a couple of questions just because I know this was a lot of content and a little bit intense. So.
Okay, so Paige was asking about the conundrums in the profiles. I gave a little brief synopsis. Is that something that you're going to cover next week?
Next week, I will look at conundrums in the profiles. I will say that what I'm going to cover next week is not necessarily going to be conundrums. Conundrums are places where we bump up against ourselves, and certainly profiles will have conundrums in them. Instead, I'm going to look at places where we tend to carry pain depending on what's in our chart. So we'll go deeper into looking at the body and behavioral choices and choice points based on type and profiles next week. So, good. Other questions?
Okay, and then Paige also asked, what else besides tapping will clear things?
There are a lot of different ways to clear things. I mean, there are, you can use shamanic practices. You know, there are people who will go through cataclysmic story changes if they do things like fire walking or go, you know, on a shamanic journey of some kind. Just simply having a consistent practice, like a meditation practice, and doing that consistently over time. I think the research says 80 days of meditation will start to change the brain, and it changes the hippocampus, so it changes the nature of how we store memories. So it'll change the nature of your memory and move you back more into alignment with positive and powerful memories. Yeah, I mean, there are definitely other ways. The thing that I just want to point out, though, is that you can change the story, you can change your behaviors, but oftentimes what we see is if we don't also knock out the epigenetics, meaning the genetic expression of some of the roots of why we choose what we choose, and this is why I like to use EFT, because there's a big, strong body of research now that shows that, you know, 1 hour of using EFT up levels gene regulation, I think in 7 core genes, 7 core gene expressions. It has measurable positive physiological effects, and it's probably the fastest way possible to get in there and not just change your mindset, but actually root around and up level the gene regulation, which is huge. So the upcoming October class, it will have EFT, because we're doing 14 lessons, and then follow up to the class, we have a series of 9 master alignments around body image. So we will be doing tapping around body image too. So good. Other questions and comments? Anything on Facebook?
Someone on Facebook asked, will it cause weight loss?
No, in fact, I put that on there. This is not specifically a weight loss class, and I don't want to focus on the idea of weight loss in this class. The goal of this class is to get you to love your body so that you begin to make a set of choices that support you in creating a healthier relationship with your physical body. I wish I could promise weight loss. I'd do that. So it will make you love yourself more, and you'll start taking better care of your body.
Okay, and the last question is, how do you tell if genetic imprinting or it's an individual choices?
That's a good question. And I'm going to say, I'm not really sure there's a way you can tell per se, but what I would say is this: go explore the story of your family if you have access to it. Talk to your mom, talk to your grandma, especially. This epigenetic programming tends to be more matrilineal than patrilineal. I'm not saying that it isn't patrilineal, but it tends to be more on the mother side. So go talk to the women in your family and find out, what's the story of our family. Go look at old photographs. You'll begin to get a sense of it. And, you know, honestly, the other answer to that question is it kind of doesn't matter. If you are doing the tapping or any other kind of modality that clears on a genetic level, it's going to, by nature, also knock out your own behavioral stuff. So yeah, it's cool and interesting to know. It also sort of doesn't matter if your goal is to change your choices and the way in which you make your choices. Do the EFT or do whatever modality you're using, you know, and just wipe out the whole thing in one fell swoop. So. Good.
All right, and I know you got to go be with
I
your
gotta go.
rascal.
You gotta go. You all have to go. So thank you, Kristen, for being my wing woman. Thank you all very much for joining us. And next week we'll talk more about sources of pain in the chart. That's not a very exciting topic. We'll talk about maybe how to get out of pain. That's better, right? So next week we'll talk more about how to make a different set of choices and getting out of pain. Have a great weekend, you guys. Bye.
Bye.